it's Madison, and today I'm going to do my labor and delivery story. Now before we get started, if you guys hear any music in the background, it's just Logan playing on his piano on his little jumperoo. So that's what you hear. So he's right next to me. If he starts to cry, just bear with me because I'm going to have to get him out. But today we're going to do, like I said, my labor and delivery story, and we're going to go ahead and get started on it. So it all started when I went to the doctor's at 39 weeks for my last 1 week checkup. So every week after, I believe 36 or 37 weeks, you get a checkup. So I just went in for my routine 39 week checkup. And now before this, I was experiencing some high blood pressure on and off, but no signs of like protein in my urine or anything like that. So nothing too crazy had happened in my pregnancy, although I was pretty sick, but besides that, nothing too crazy, like harmful for the baby. But on that day, I had mentioned to my doctor, because for the last day or two I hadn't felt Logan move as much. I felt him, but it just wasn't as frequently as I was used to from his patterns. So it would be like 1 kick every hour or 2 kicks every hour. I don't know exactly, but it was something like that. So we went in. He lost his Sophie. I went into the doctor and I told her about it, and she immediately told the ultrasound technician to do a BPP, which is a biophysical profile. So we got that done, and during it, if you don't know what it is, it tests for 3 different things, which is the amniotic fluid level, the kick count, and then also the practice breathing. And within this certain time frame, they have to do things a certain amount of time. So in 30 minutes, they have to do all 3. And I believe they should be practicing breathing 3 times. There should be like 6 kicks, and their amniotic fluid should be at the level it is supposed to. Now on ours, the ultrasound technician at the doctor's office was not able to get Logan to move. And then also he was not practicing breathing at all. So he had no practicing breathing movements. So from then on, she went and talked to my doctor, and she told me to go straight to the hospital right away, which was very nerve-wracking. I was very scared. I didn't know what this meant. This may sound funny, but the first thing I thought was, oh my Lord, he's not breathing. How is he alive? But in logic sense, obviously, they don't need to breathe in the womb. They just need to be practicing the breathing, but obviously they don't need to breathe. So I went to the hospital, and I immediately got checked out, and they took me to a non-stress test, which luckily by this point Logan was moving a little bit more frequently, but it just wasn't like it should have been. So then they did a biophysical profile at the hospital as well with their ultrasound technician, and he was moving in it, so that was good. So his kick count was fine, but he still was not practicing breathing. So when I went back, the doctor on call told me that they were just going to go ahead and induce me because of the fact that Logan was not practicing breathing. And at this point, it was at 39 weeks, I was considered full term, and it was more important. It was more safer at this point to get the baby out. We did do the non-stress test, which he ended up passing. It just wasn't like ideal, and he did not pass the biophysical profile. So I believe the scores out of 9, and he got a 6 because he got 3 points taken away because he was not practicing breathing at all. So he was not practicing breathing at all, and at this point they said, we're going to go ahead and induce you at 39 weeks. Now if you know anything about it, they hardly ever induce at 39 weeks. It's very rare. But they decided to go ahead and induce me, like I said, because at this point it was just safer for the baby to be out. And with my blood pressure being high and low, and then I was just really sick. I had hyperemesis during my pregnancy. They just thought it would be best to get him out of there. So they started me off with, what is it called? Cervidil. So the first Cervidil, and they put it in your cervix, and you wait 12 hours, and after the 12 hours they check you, and it's supposed to soften your cervix. I had to get that twice. So for the first day, really nothing happened. I was already effaced and dilated when I came into the hospital, was 2 centimeters dilated, and I was, I believe, 50% effaced, but I was very high up. He was still at a station 3. So he was still really, really high up. So the Cervidil actually ended up doing nothing, but after the 24 hours, they started me on Pitocin. Now, if you guys know anything about Pitocin, it makes your contractions like 10 times worse than they are. I wanted to have a natural delivery. I did not get the chance to do that with my first because I was induced as well, but this time I really wanted to. But it got to the point that I was so stressed out, and I was having, my contractions were about 100, which is totally off the scale. I believe the strongest one was about 120. And at this point, when they checked me right before I got my epidural, I was still only at 4 centimeters. And I had been on the Pitocin for about 12 more hours, and that's still only 4 centimeters. So I just changed like a centimeter and a half in 12 hours from the time after the Cervidil. So it was very disheartening. I was very nervous because obviously they wanted to get him out. His, oh, it was so scary. His heart rate kept decelerating. So that was very scary. I had to be hooked up on the monitors the whole time. So finally I ended up getting the epidural. And by this point they weren't able to break my water because he was still very, very high up. He was at a level about 3. Yeah, he was at a level 3. So after the epidural, it was in the middle of the night. I believe it was about 2 in the morning is when this happened. My blood pressure decreased to about, it was 60/40. So it was really, really, really low. Now, if you guys know anything about the epidural or a spinal block in general, they actually make your blood pressure go down. But it was awful. I threw up like 3 times. Everyone was asleep during this because, you know, nothing exciting was happening at this point. And his heart rate kept going down. So at this point, they took me off the Pitocin because his heart rate was decelerating. And since I was so sick with my low blood pressure, they did end up getting it under control after an hour. I had an oxygen mask on, and it slowly got up. So that was good. It ended up being around the normal range after that. So around, I want to say it was around 2 o'clock, the doctor finally came in. She was on call that night, and, you know, nothing exciting had happened. And she ended up breaking my water, which, yeah, at this point, I was only 5 centimeters. So about 24 hours into labor, and I was only 5 centimeters, which was awful. I mean, oh my God. I thought it wasn't recording. Anyways, sorry about that. So at this point I was only 5 centimeters, but luckily he had lowered to a station 2. So at this point it was safe for her to break my water, because if he's too high up, it can cause a cord prolapse, which we do not want. So, that basically means that the umbilical cord comes out before the baby does, and that cuts off oxygen supply. So very scary. So that happened around 1 or 2 o'clock, and we were getting to the point, the doctors were talking, that we were probably going to have a C-section, because his heart rate kept decelerating. And it was, I mean, it was scary. It had been a rough 2.5 days. Not only was he practicing breathing, his movements did get better, so that was good. His movements were fine once I was in labor and delivery, but his heart rate kept acting up. So that was obviously not ideal. So when the doctor was supposed to come and check me, but at this point, his heart rate was going really, really low. So she decided to check me, and at this point, she said, "You are 10 centimeters, and this happened went from 5 to 10 in like an hour and a half. From the epidural, that was great. I just felt like literally like I was gonna poop myself. That's what it felt like. It was just tons of pressure, and like I had to poop myself. So at this point, she's like, okay, we're gonna just practice pushing. We called, my mom was there and my sister were there, but we called my sister-in-law and my husband's mom and all of that. And obviously my husband was there. But at this point, I started pushing, and unfortunately his heart rate was still decelerating. So at this point, it was kind of like an emergency, get him out. he was really, really low. I mean, you could feel his head at this point. He went so fast. I was still at a station 2, so he went from a station 2 to a -3 where he's supposed to be crowning in an hour and a half. So that was totally awesome, to be honest with you. But so I started pushing, and at this point the doctor, or the nurse, was like, okay, I'm gonna call a doctor now, and she's gonna come in and push, but you can keep on pushing, because she thought I had, you know, a couple more pushes at me. Well, I pushed one time, and the doctor started saying, no, 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 no more pushing, no more pushing. So I stopped. But the issue was the doctor was not in the room yet, and I could feel like I had no control over my body. He just literally like slid out. That's what it felt like. It felt like just sliding out of me. And it was so frustrating because I knew the doctor was not there at this point, and it was really scary. But he ended up coming out, and literally as he was coming out, the doctor came in. We ended up finding out, so he came out, and he actually did not cry right away, which was very crazy to me. My son came out wailing, my first son, but he was fine. He was perfect. He ended up having the cord wrapped around his neck 2 times. So that was what was causing the heart rate deceleration. And also, it probably was the reason he wasn't practicing breathing in the womb, because if he breathed too much, it could have suffocated him. So I got really, honestly, lucky. It was very scary when I found that out, that the cord was wrapped around his neck twice. I mean, that can be a very deadly situation, and I think we are just so lucky that we got him out when he did, that we went to the hospital, that my doctors were so diligent about doing the BBP, and just everything in general. I mean, it was just a relief. And I'm thankful for the nurse who basically delivered Logan, because the doctor, she stitched me up, but that's pretty much all she did. But she was so fast in a hurry getting the umbilical cord up around his neck. I mean, it was like boom, boom, boom within a matter of seconds. And you see my sister and my mom and my husband looking in horror at the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. And they said that when he came out, because obviously I wasn't pushing, he was just crying so much that he literally slid out, and that he was like doing this with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. So it was very intimidating, and I feel very fortunate that we have a lucky, healthy. He was 6 pounds 6 ounces when he was born, and 19.5 inches, and he was perfectly healthy. His Argyle test was an 8 when they first did it, and then it was a 10. So he ended up, it was perfect. He was perfect. He didn't have to go in the NICU. He didn't have to do he didn't have any problems breathing. We got very, very lucky with that. But I made this video to kind of not only go over my labor and delivery story, but also to tell you, as parents or anyone that's pregnant, if you have any type of inclination that something is wrong, talk to somebody and just be very diligent. Because I really do believe if we had kept him in there longer than he should have been, something bad would have really happened. And I'm just very lucky that my doctors and nurses took me seriously. And just, if they don't, just do whatever you have to do to make it known, because you know your baby, you know your body more than anybody else does. And honestly, with all of the craziness that happened, I'm just so thankful for that. And yeah, that's my labor and delivery story, guys. But Logan wanted to say goodbye. Here he is. Now he is definitely not 6 pounds 6 ounces. Very big, chunky boy. I'm gonna do his 4-month update next week after we go to the doctor. We're going on Monday, and then I'll post that. So if you guys have any questions or concerns, please leave them in the down bar, and subscribe if you want. Leave a comment. Love y'all. Bye. Bye.